Say this before you get out of bed and watch opportunities chase you. Napoleon Hill taught that the moment you open your eyes each morning is not a small moment at all. It is the moment your whole day is decided. And if you have ever felt opportunity slip past you while you were still rubbing the sleep from your eyes, you are not the only one who has felt that quiet defeat. Here is the law Napoleon Hill set down as plainly as he knew how. Thoughts are things, and thought mixed with definiteness of purpose, persistence, and a burning desire can be transmuted into its physical equivalent. That is the exact teaching from Think and Grow Rich. And Hill would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? The question was never whether you would think first thing in the morning. You cannot help but think. The only question is what you allow to do the thinking for you before the world gets its turn. Most men let the alarm clock, the unpaid bill, and the long list of the day's troubles do their thinking for them, and then they wonder why opportunity never seems to notice them. You have been taught that you must go out and chase opportunity. Hustle for it. Hunt it down before someone else gets there first. And that very belief, Hill would say, is the thing standing between you and it. Because opportunity is not drawn to the frightened mind that goes chasing after it. Opportunity is drawn to the prepared mind that has already decided, in faith, what it intends to become. Say it with me. I rise each morning with a definite purpose burning in my mind. I fill the first 60 seconds of my day with faith instead of fear. And what I conceive and believe, I achieve. Again, I rise each morning with a definite purpose burning in my mind. I fill the first 60 seconds of my day with faith instead of fear. And what I conceive and believe, I achieve. If something in you went quiet just now, type the 2 words, I achieve, in the comments below, and let it be your seal on what you just spoke. And while you are there, subscribe, so that tomorrow's teaching finds you before the world has its chance to speak first. The first key is this. The first 60 seconds after waking belong to you alone, and Hill taught that the subconscious mind is most receptive in the hours nearest sleep. At night as you drift off and in the morning as you surface. This is why he instructed his students to speak their written chief aim aloud, with feeling both night and morning. And he meant it as a law of the mind, not a pleasant habit for men who had spare time. Think for a moment of the ordinary man, his eyes open, and before his feet touch the floor, his mind is already reciting the day's troubles, the traffic, the demanding boss, the bills stacked on the counter. He has, without knowing it, given his subconscious its orders for the day. And the subconscious, Hill taught, does not argue, it does not judge whether the thought handed to it is useful or harmful. It simply goes to work building the day to match the picture it was handed. This is the same law whether the picture is one of fear or one of purpose. The mind is a faithful servant. It does not choose your master. It only obeys the one you give it first. Notice how many men reach for the telephone the instant their eyes open, before a single word of their own has been spoken, and let a stranger's headline, a stranger's opinion, a stranger's quarrel, become the very first thought of their day. That man has handed his morning to the whole world before he has claimed 1 second of it for himself. And Hill would say he cannot complain of the day that follows, for he ordered it himself, only he ordered it blindly. Now think of another man, same bed, same alarm clock, the same bills waiting on the same counter. But before his feet touch the floor, he speaks one line with feeling, some version of, I am moving toward my definite purpose today. And Hill would tell you plainly, it is not the length of the sentence that matters. It is not even the wording that matters. It is the feeling mixed into it. For the subconscious acts only upon thought that is mixed with emotion. A sentence spoken flatly, out of habit, with the mind already half on the coffee pot, does almost nothing, but that same sentence, spoken slowly, meant, felt in the chest as well as the mind, becomes an order the subconscious cannot ignore. Picture the 2 of them stepping onto the very same street a few minutes later, same weather, same headlines waiting on the same newsstand. And yet one carries a fog in his mind and the other carries a fixed point. It is not the alarm clock that decides your day, Hill would say. It is whichever voice reaches your mind first. And for most men, that voice belongs to the world, this week, Before you reach for your phone, before the world gets its say, speak one sentence about the day you intend to have, and mean it as you say it. My command over the first 60 seconds of my day, and no man takes them from me. The second key is this. Definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. Hill wrote it that way in his own words. And he meant it as a law, not a suggestion. Most men, he observed, go through their entire lives without ever writing down, in one clear sentence, what it is they intend to become or acquire. They carry vague wishes instead, and a vague wish, Hill taught, produces nothing, because the subconscious cannot build toward a fog, it can only build toward a picture. Think for a moment of the man who tells himself every January that this will be the year he gets ahead. He means it, in a soft sort of way. But he has never written the sentence, never named the sum, never fixed the date, and by March the wish has quietly dissolved back into the noise of daily living, because it was never anything more than a mood. Now think of the shopkeeper who, instead, writes on a card kept behind his register, "I will own 3 stores within 5 years," and reads it aloud before he unlocks the door each morning. That man is not smarter than the first. He is simply more definite. And Hill would say the difference between those two men is the entire difference between drifting and arriving. This is why Hill told the story, again and again, of Edwin Barnes, a poor young man who arrived at Thomas Edison's laboratory, not asking for a job but announcing that he had come to become the business partner of Thomas Edison. He took work sweeping floors because it was the only door open to him, but he never once let go of the one sentence burning in his mind, and years later, when Edison needed a man to market the dictating machine, it was Barnes he chose, because Barnes had spent years thinking, speaking, and acting as though the partnership already existed. Notice, Hill would say, that Barnes did not write 10 goals or 20 hopes. He carried exactly one sentence, and carried it with such steadiness that circumstance itself eventually bent to match it. Hill would ask you plainly, what is your one sentence, not your list of 10 hopes? Your one sentence, written on paper, read aloud with feeling twice each day. This is the written definite chief aim, and without it you are, in Hill's word, drifting. And drifting is the great destroyer of every ambition a man was ever given. Notice also that a written purpose does something a spoken wish never can. It becomes an object you can return to, a fixed point the mind can measure the day against. Ask yourself tonight whether today's actions moved you nearer that sentence or further from it. And let that single question become your quiet discipline. Take a sheet of paper this week and write one sentence, your definite chief aim, and read it aloud tonight and again tomorrow morning. My purpose is written, and a written purpose cannot drift. The third key is this. There is a vast difference, Hill taught, between a wish and a burning desire, and nearly every man who fails because he mistook the first for the second. A wish is soft. It bends the moment the day gets hard. It asks politely and accepts whatever answer life happens to give it. A burning desire, Hill wrote, is a state of mind that will not accept the possibility of failure. And it is only this second kind of desire that the subconscious will act upon. I think for a moment of 2 men standing at the very same starting line. Both of them say they want to leave a job that is slowly wearing them down. The first man says it the way he might mention the weather. He mentions it to his wife over dinner. He mentions it again to a friend at the coffee machine. And then he goes back to the same desk on Monday, exactly as he left it on Friday. That is a wish. It costs him nothing, and it changes nothing. The second man writes the exact sum he intends to earn on his own, on a card he keeps in his pocket. He reads it aloud before he sleeps, and again before the sun is fully up. He tells himself, with feeling, that the day of his leaving is already fixed, and within months his circumstances, his contacts, his very conversations begin bending quietly toward that fixed point. Hill would tell you plainly, the difference between those 2 men was never talent, it was heat. And heat, he taught, can be measured by a simple test. Ask yourself whether you would still pursue the thing if every comfort were stripped away and only the wanting remained. A wish disappears under that test. A burning desire only grows hotter. Consider the ordinary tradesman who wishes for a shop of his own. He says so at the tavern on a Friday night. He says so again the following Friday, and every Friday after that, and 10 years pass, and the shop never appears, because the wishing itself had become the comfortable habit, a substitute for the desire it pretended to be. Now consider his neighbor, a woman with far less money and no better standing, who decides, in one evening, exactly what her shop will be called, exactly how much she must save, exactly the date the doors will open, and who repeats that decision aloud every night, the way another woman might say a prayer. In 3 years the shop exists, and the tavern is still full of men wishing. Hill would say the shop was never built of brick and money first. It was built of a decision, repeated with feeling, until it hardened into fact. Hill told a story closer to his own home than any other in his life, of his infant son who was born without any external ears at all, and doctors told the father plainly that the boy would likely never hear or speak a single word. But that father refused the verdict. He decided, with a burning desire that would not bend, that his son would live a full and hearing life, and he spoke to that boy constantly, and read to that boy, and expected of him exactly what he would expect of any hearing child, never once permitting the word impossible near that house. And in time the boy began to hear, faintly at first, through the bone of his own skull, and grew into a young man who lived a full and useful life. Hill did not offer that story as a miracle. He offered it as proof of a law, that a burning desire, communicated with faith and persistence, can move circumstances that reason alone calls impossible. And he would ask you plainly, if a desire that hot could open a path through solid bone, what exactly is your excuse for the much smaller mountain standing in front of you? Notice too what that father did not do. He did not wish quietly and wait for medicine to change its mind. He acted daily as though the outcome were already settled. And that, Hill taught, is the second mark that separates desire from wishing. A wish waits. A burning desire moves the feet even before the eyes can see the road. Hill left 6 practical steps for turning a desire into its physical equivalent. Fix in your mind exactly what you want, decide what you intend to give in return for it, set a definite date, create a definite plan, and begin at once whether ready or not. Write all 4 out in one clear statement, and read that statement aloud twice daily with the feeling of already possessing it. Pause for a moment right now, and pick one real desire from your own life, not a vague hope, a real one, and run it silently through those 6 steps before you finish this video. A wish waits for the world to change. A burning desire changes the man first, and the world follows after. My desire burns. It does not merely wish. The 4th key is this: faith. Hill insisted, is not a gift handed to a lucky few. It is a state of mind that any man can manufacture through repetition. This is the whole meaning behind his famous line, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And he built an entire method around that single sentence: autosuggestion, the practice of feeding the subconscious a chosen thought, spoken aloud with feeling. Until belief follows the repetition the way morning follows night, Hill gave his students a self-confidence formula for this exact purpose. They were told to write out their definite purpose, read it aloud twice daily, and hold in the mind, for a few minutes at a time, the picture of themselves already in possession of it, not as a daydream, but as a disciplined rehearsal. Think of an ordinary woman selling insurance door to door. She hears no 9 times before lunch, and by the 4th no her voice has already gone thin with defeat, unless, before she ever left the house that morning, she had spoken her own statement aloud. I am a capable agent. Prospects respond to my confidence, and held that picture in her mind until it felt settled rather than borrowed. That woman hears the same 9 refusals, but her voice does not thin, because her subconscious was fed before the world got its chance to feed it first. This is the difference Hill pointed to again and again. Not talent, not luck, simply which thought got there first and which thought was repeated with feeling until it took root. Compare the skeptic who says, I will believe it when I see it, to the student Hill trained, who understood the order runs the other way entirely. You will see it when you believe it, because belief is what directs the subconscious to arrange the very circumstances your eyes are waiting to see. Faith is not blind hope, Hill was careful to say. It is a manufactured certainty, built the same way a man builds a muscle, through repeated exercise, using the same fibers day after day until they no longer tire so quickly. And it can be shaken loose by doubt just as easily as a muscle can be weakened by disuse. One skipped morning, one skipped evening, and the old fearful thought creeps back in to do the work faith had only begun. So guard it. Speak your written statement again tonight, with feeling, as though the thing were already yours, not as a hope you are pleading for, but as a fact you are simply reporting. My faith is not found, it is built, one repetition at a time. Before we go to the fifth key, if this teaching has stirred something in you, subscribe now, so tomorrow's lesson does not pass you by. There is no cost to staying near a voice that is only trying to help you finish what you started. The fifth key is this, and it is the heaviest one, so let us take it in pieces. Persistence, Hill wrote, is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. Without it, a man is soft, easily bent, easily broken by the first hard wind. With it, a man can be struck again and again and still hold his shape. And Hill was careful to say that persistence is not a gift some men are born with and others are not. It is a state of mind, and like faith, like desire, it can be cultivated on purpose by any man willing to do the work of cultivating it. First, consider the story Hill told of a man named R.U. Darby, whose uncle caught gold fever out west and staked a claim, dug and drilled for weeks until he struck a vein, then quietly borrowed heavy machinery, told no one, and began hauling out ore, until one day the vein vanished. He drilled on in a kind of desperation, consulted no engineer, told no partner, carried the whole weight of the search alone on his own back, and finally, defeated, sold the machinery for a few $100s to a junk man, and went home to tell his family the mine was worthless. That junk man, before restarting the work, brought in a mining engineer, who calculated that the vein had only faulted, and told him to dig 3 feet further from the exact spot where the digging had stopped. 3 feet, and there it was, millions of dollars in ore, sitting quietly in the dark exactly where the first man had laid down his pick and walked away. Hill used that story his whole life to teach one lesson: that temporary defeat is not the same thing as failure. It is only the world's way of testing whether your desire is real, and the tragedy is never that a man is defeated. The tragedy is that he mistakes a temporary defeat for a permanent one, and lays down his tools 3 feet from the very thing he came for. Second, consider what Hill called the 6 ghosts of fear: the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. And Hill was careful to teach that these 6 are not real forces in the world. They are states of mind, manufactured the same way faith is manufactured, only manufactured by neglect instead of discipline. Walk through an ordinary day with me and watch how they operate. 7 in the morning, a man reads a headline about the economy and the fear of poverty, quietly takes a seat in his mind before his coffee is even poured. 9 o'clock he hesitates to share his idea in a meeting because the fear of criticism has followed him to his desk and sat down uninvited. Noon, he feels a strange ache in his side, and the fear of ill health whispers its way in, and will not leave for the rest of the afternoon. 3 in the afternoon, he does not call an old friend because he fears rejection more than he values the friendship. 5 o'clock, he passes on an opportunity to speak to a stranger who might have changed his fortunes, because some old ghost tells him he is too old now for new beginnings. And by evening, he has made not one single decision all day. He has only reacted 6 separate times to 6 separate ghosts. And Hill would say that man was not defeated by the world that day. He was defeated by 6 visitors that have no bodies at all, and could not have touched him if he had simply refused to open the door. The remedy, Hill taught, is closing the mind deliberately against negative influences, the way you would close a door against a draft. Decide once, in writing, what you believe about your own capability, and refuse to reopen that decision every single time a ghost knocks politely and asks to be let back in. Third, consider that persistence is rarely carried by one man alone for very long. Hill taught that 2 or more minds, working together in perfect harmony toward one definite purpose, create a third and invisible force, greater than the simple sum of the 2. He called this the mastermind, and he pointed again and again to men like Andrew Carnegie, who Hill said surrounded himself with a group of specialized minds in perfect harmony, engineers and chemists and salesmen and financiers, none of them persisting entirely alone, each one borrowing strength from the others in the group during the seasons when his own persistence ran thin. And Hill said that fortune was built by that harmony as much as by any one man's individual grit. This is why Hill also spoke of invisible counselors, a nightly practice of sitting quietly and, in imagination, seating at a council table the great minds whose qualities you most wish to draw into your own character. Courage borrowed from one chair at that table, patience borrowed from another, unbending persistence borrowed from a third, not as make-believe for children, but as a disciplined exercise for stirring the subconscious toward exactly the qualities persistence requires when the vein seems to have vanished. Fourth, consider that persistence is built the same way any muscle is built, by small, repeated decisions rather than by one great heroic stand. The shopkeeper who stays open one more discouraging hour, the salesman who makes one more call after 9 refusals, the writer who fills one more page when the page before it felt worthless. None of these are dramatic moments. None of them would make a newspaper. But Hill taught that a man's whole character is quietly built, or quietly destroyed, in exactly these small, unwitnessed moments. And the man who has trained himself to take the next small step regardless of feeling has already mastered the one habit every great fortune Hill ever studied had in common. So here is your exercise. Pick one place in your life right now where you stopped digging, one dream you quietly set down when it got hard, and ask yourself honestly whether you are 3 feet from the vein, and then decide, today, whether the ghost that stopped you was ever real at all. My persistence outlasts every ghost that has no body at all. The 6th key is this. Drifting, Hill warned, is the great destroyer. More men lose their fortune and their purpose to drifting than to any dramatic failure a newspaper would ever print. Drifting is simply living without a definite decision, letting each day's circumstances make your choices for you, while you stand by and call it patience. And the opposite of drifting is not effort, it is decision. Hill studied hundreds of successful men and found that every one of them shared the habit of reaching decisions promptly and firmly, while the men who failed shared the habit of endless procrastination. Indecision, Hill called it, is the seedling of fear, and fear, left alone, grows into the very drifting that destroys a life one postponed choice at a time. Think of the ordinary man who tells himself he will start tomorrow, he will call the bank tomorrow, he will write the letter tomorrow, he will begin the new habit on Monday, and Hill would tell you plainly that tomorrow is the favorite hiding place of every drifting man who ever lived, because tomorrow never actually arrives. Only another today arrives, dressed up to look like tomorrow, and the drifting man greets it the same way he greeted yesterday, with no decision at all. This is why the whole teaching returns, every single time, to that first 60 seconds after waking, because it is there, before the day's noise begins, that you make your one decision for the day. Definite purpose over drift, faith over the 6 ghosts, persistence over the 3 feet you almost quit at. Decide it there, in that quiet room, before your feet touch the floor, and notice, Hill would say, that the decision itself costs you nothing. It takes no money and no permission from another man, only a mind willing to stop drifting long enough to choose. Picture 2 neighbors leaving for work, on the same street at the same hour. One has decided nothing since he opened his eyes. He simply reacts to whatever the morning hands him. The other decided, before his feet touched the floor, exactly what kind of day he intended to build. And though the street is the same, and the traffic is the same, Hill taught that these 2 men are, in the deepest sense, walking through 2 different worlds. Hill promised nothing about how the day would unfold in detail, but he taught, with total conviction, that the mind which has already decided walks differently through the world, carries itself differently, speaks differently, and the world, sensing that certainty, begins to open doors it keeps closed to every drifting man who passes by unnoticed. My decision is made before my feet touch the floor. Here is the whole picture. Each key you just received was never 6 separate ideas. It was one single recognition turned 6 different ways. The mind that commands its own first 60 seconds commands the rest of its day. It is not effort that opens the door to opportunity, it is decision. It is not the size of your wish that moves the subconscious. It is the burning heat mixed into it. It is not luck that separates the man who struck gold from the man who quit 3 feet short. It is persistence, carried one day past the point of temporary defeat. It is not blind hope that builds faith. It is repetition, spoken aloud with feeling, until belief becomes fact in the only mind that ever mattered, your own. And it is not chasing that brings opportunity to your door. It is the prepared and decided mind that opportunity cannot help but notice. Napoleon Hill built his entire philosophy on the conviction that a man could not simply hear these laws once and expect them to hold. He had to practice them daily until they became as natural as breathing, and that is the whole purpose behind the definite aim method, a short guided morning and night practice, built directly from these teachings, to help you write your definite chief aim, speak it with feeling, and close your mind each night against the 6 ghosts before they ever get a foothold. It is available now for a modest one-time price, backed by a full 30-day refund if it does not serve you. The link is in the description below, and if you take nothing else from this teaching, take this. The men Hill studied did not wait to feel ready, they decided, and then the readiness caught up to them. Say it with me one final time. I rise each morning with a definite purpose burning in my mind. I fill the first 60 seconds of my day with faith instead of fear, and what I conceive and believe, I achieve. Say this before you get out of bed tomorrow, and watch how differently opportunity looks at a mind that has already decided.